Hi there. Hi, Adam.
Hi, Sinead, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you today?
Pretty good. Hi, Christine. Hi, Dylan.
How you guys doing?
Good.
Everyone.
Hi there.
Hi, Sydney.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I was trying, is the link to the revised one kicked me back. Are you having the same problem or not? I mean, no?
No?
Okay. So I was hitting the agenda, the revised agenda, the links on it. I clicked on that one and it said like it's invalid or something.
Oh, that's actually the one I used to get in. So
Hey, it could
Yeah,
be,
me too. I use that one.
you
yeah,
foiled our
I've been having
defenses, Sydney.
issues
We were
all
just
day
trying to
long.
keep you out.
Okay. Been having issues all day long, so it could be me. Probably me.
Well, glad to see that you're here. That's good. Hi, Eric.
What are you doing?
Good. Well, I think we now, with Eric, we do actually have a quorum, but we probably should wait a couple more minutes and see if any other members are able to join us before we start.
Brad just emailed the group and said he had an emergency, so we shouldn't expect him.
Okay.
And Phil's not coming, so we have.
Did John say he wasn't coming too? I know he emailed
don't-
at one point.
Yeah, I remember getting an email, but I don't remember what it said.
Yeah, I don't either. And Troy, oh, there's Troy.
There's Troy, so only one unaccounted for is John.
Okay.
Hey, Troy.
Welcome, Troy. How are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. Well, since the first couple of things are approving the minutes and talking about what we heard last time, it seems like we ought to be able to get those started while we wait and see if John joins us. So we'll call the meeting to order and welcome everybody to the June 10th meeting of the Community Preservation Committee. Our first order of business is the review and approval of the May 27th meeting minutes. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at those? Thank you, Dylan, again for taking good minutes and circulating them well in advance for us. Do we have a motion regarding those minutes?
I motion to approve.
Thank you, Troy. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, thanks, Sinead. Any comments or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, all set with that. Thank you. So we don't have anything continued from before. So we're looking at the discussion of the public hearing and survey results. I guess can generally throw that open to the members to comment on anything that you heard from the public or your observations from the survey that was disseminated.
Well, I'll start. I thought it was a good meeting. It was nice to hear what the public had to say. I do hope that the folks realize that we're not going to just do these programs from the committee, that somebody's going to have to propose the program, and they don't come yelling at us when the things that they suggested don't happen. So that's my one kind of comment is I'd love to hear nonprofits kind of take up these challenges or city departments take up these challenges. But I think everybody in the committee understands. I just hope the public understands that we're not going to be just taking their ideas and voting them into action. It takes a program. So, but it was great to hear from all the people about all the different ideas, and I think a lot of them are really good ideas. And the survey too. I thought that the survey was good, and it was good to hear to see kind of the broad spectrum of interest that people had across the various.
Will this survey be produced in terms of like, in presentation format in a way? I like, the way I see it here, it's really nice in terms of percentage, easy to read and easy to understand. Is there a way, or maybe is there something that in the future though that will be put into presentation format that can be, given out to the public, or this is the formats is going to be?
We were planning on publishing the results of the survey along with the other materials like the CPA plan.
You were planning.
Correct. We're planning.
Good. Got it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I thought the staff did a really good job incorporating the results of the survey into the plan. Thought they did a great job.
I was impressed to see the pretty broad support for all the categories of funding. My understanding is that in some communities there has been a kind of overwhelming interest in one particular category, often at the expense of some of the others, and I think it's encouraging to see that the participants in the survey in Lowell, and certainly what we heard at the public hearing as well, was interest in really all of the major categories. So I think it will make it I think a lot. It'll make our job both easier and harder. We won't have to try to find projects for the category that nobody wants to fund in a particular municipality, but it'll also be a challenge because I do think there's going to be a lot of good ideas. I share Eric's concern about. I have shared Eric's concern before as well about whether the advocates for the ideas will always be the same people who have the capacity and interest in actually executing them. And so I think one thing that we will need to pay attention to, I think as we maybe later in the agenda when we talk about the application process, is making sure that there is also some alignment between and some clarity about the applicant and who's expected to actually execute the project along the way. But any other comments on the public hearing or survey results? If not, we can probably continue that conversation into the next item, which is really the plan draft itself. And Christine gave us a good segue there. So I also commend not just on incorporating the survey results, but I commend the staff on what is really a very handsome document that's really well put together and strikes the right balance, I think, in general, of identifying the specifics of how this is appropriate to Lowell, while also leaving sufficient openness to be supportive of that broad range of community interests and projects that we're already starting to see. So, but I don't know, Dylan, do you want to walk through and give us any kind of presentation of the draft plan before we talk about any more specifics, or should we open it to the committee members?
I can just give a brief explanation of sort of the goal of the plan, if that's helpful. So the goal of the plan was basically just to give background on the CPA for potential applicants or the public or anyone who's interested, and then incorporate in the goals that'll help kind of guide the CPC's decisions and funding. That's just kind of the gist of what the idea of it was.
That's great. And also thank you again for circulating it well in advance of the meeting and even in its earlier draft form so that the committee members had some time to really digest it, because there's a lot there. I guess I'll open it up and see if any of the members have any specific comments about the plan or questions.
I mean, I'm still absorbing it, but it's really nicely done. I mean, it's almost like a complete package to me, but I still, for me, it just probably take a little more time to just, reading through the whole entire thing. But this is excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, I share similar comments. I haven't completely finished it, but no, I mean, it's a handsome document. I mean, at least I think maybe I read through like half of it, but yeah, I mean, it's well put together. I think it's something that we should be proud of,
I would just echo Adam and Christine's comments about, I think it really captured the survey and what we heard at the public meeting. But at the same time, I think that it's open enough that we can, depending on what kind of applications we get, we can still kind of distribute the funds pretty evenly, because I do agree that there was a broad range of interest based on the survey results, which is exciting, I think, that people have interest in all of these categories, because I think they're all important. So I like that it was I think it was written that, you know, these are the goals of the plan, but that if it still met, it didn't have to meet all of the goals, but it could meet certain goals or parts of the CPA itself. So I appreciated that.
Christine, did you have any comments or?
No, I thought they did a really good job. I had a few questions looking at the documents, and then I read the plan and it answered my questions. So I think they did a really great job.
It's doing what it's supposed to. Awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
And Eric, did you have any comments?
Well, I unfairly can give my comments directly to the drafters as they're giving me drafts. So I don't have any comments. Anything I would have had input on, I would have just told Dylan he would have changed it. That being said, I do want to give a lot of credit to Dylan. He has worked really hard on this, and he has, I think the committee has appreciated, done a really excellent job. You know, for a community that's never done this before and a staff that's never done this before. He really kind of picked up the ball and ran with it. And it's been really impressive to see. I also want to just mention Jess Wilson, who's our associate planner, who kind of assisted Dylan on working on this, and they both worked really hard, and I think they've put together a good document that I think that we can move forward with, as other folks have said. So
great. Well, I did have a few specific comments from my review of it that I did share with Dylan in advance, but I wanted to just share in the forum of the whole committee, because certainly if they are solely my opinion and everyone else disagrees, they should be disregarded. But if they are something that the other members of the committee also would share a recommendation to look at, I want to sort of give us the chance. And absolutely, I completely agree that on balance, this is a fantastic document and a very, very strong. So these are relatively minor suggestions. The first one actually falls under the section where it addresses Lowell's affordable housing goals. There is a explicit reference to the housing crisis, and I wonder whether a document that is really meant to be a guidance document should make a statement that is that strong with respect to housing. And it might be more appropriate to say something along the lines of address housing needs or affordable housing needs or something of that nature. There certainly are people in the community for whom housing issues could be deemed a crisis, although I would probably argue that based on some of the things we heard from the public hearing, there are probably people who feel that historic preservation is a crisis in certain areas. There are probably people who feel that the condition of recreation resources or park resources may be a crisis, or the spoiling of open land may be a crisis. And I'm not really sure it's our job in the plan to define any of those things as a crisis.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Adam. I never really even thought about that. It's like I do a lot of affordable housing, a lot of community meetings, and yeah, sometimes saying stuff like that, you get the backlash, and I sort of get it. Like, in a way, like we have to be not neutral, but yeah, I think by saying crisis, it could create ripples with some aspects of the community, as you rightfully pointed out. So yeah, I mean, I will agree with you on that.
if others have reaction to that or not.
I don't have a strong opinion either way. I did appreciate that right after it said that Lowell is exceeding the minimum requirements for affordable housing that the state has mandated. So I thought that maybe being shocked by crisis, but then saying like, oh well, actually Lowell is exceeding a minimum kind of was calming. But I don't have a strong opinion either way about whether we include the language or not. Thanks.
Is there another, and I'll put this question to Adam because you pointed it out. Is there another way you think we word that sentence that would, I mean, housing concerns, housing issues? Is there another way that sentence could be, the end of that paragraph or that part of the paragraph could be written in a way that would kind of eliminate your concerns, which I hear?
My suggestion is just to be really simple and just say, instead of, it currently says address the housing crisis, I would just say address housing needs. And I mean, I think it's really about those needs will change over time, I'm sure, but and it's clear that that's something we are going to do as part of this. We also, even though it's exciting that we have $2.5 million to program, that isn't going to solve a crisis of any kind. So we may be setting the bar too high too. The next one I have is just a question. The first specific goal under housing for the city or for our plan stated the redevelopment of vacant, abandoned, or underutilized city land for affordable housing, and city is capitalized. And I just wanted to understand if the intent there was vacant and underutilized land in the city of Lowell, or if it was intended to imply city-owned vacant land. Because when you capitalize city, I interpret that to mean the city government, and it implies that the focus and the priority should be redeveloping city-owned land, which that may have been the intent, and that may be fine. But I also wonder if the goal may want to be broader than that, because there's probably a fair amount of, well, I know there's probably a fair amount more opportunity sites that are not city-owned than that are.
That is you're right, that's a typo. It should be a lowercase c. I think our intent is to have the goal state the redevelopment of land in the city, not necessarily just city-owned land.
Okay. My next question, a little further down under the overall goals, there's a statement that says public input suggests the two most important categories to Lowell are open space and community housing. And if you look at the people who said those were very important, the percentage was slightly higher than the other categories. But if you add, as most of the time when people are aggregating data around, which has that sort of spectrum of somewhat important, more, very important, and so forth, they typically take the important and very important categories and combine them to assess how many people really think it's an important issue. And if you do that, you reach a slightly different conclusion, which is that the open space and recreation actually is viewed more significantly higher. There's about a 10% difference than the other two, and the other two, historic preservation and community housing, are virtually identical. I don't know that this is a bit substantive, because I think we're trying to make a statement about what the community's priority is, and I'm a little bit nervous if, I think a reasonable way of interpreting it suggests that there's a fair amount of interest in Lowell, of all places, in historic preservation that is diminished by the statement as it currently reads. And it also may underplay the fact that a lot of people in the city, I think, really are prioritizing open space and recreation. And I don't know if we want to adjust that at all.
I can just tell you our thought process behind that. The reason that we mentioned, I think it probably makes sense to change that to have open space and recreation. Clearly that was from the survey, that was the thing that people most had interest in. I think the reason we mentioned housing as well was because of the amount of people who stated that it was very important versus regularly important.
And maybe another way to do it is just be more literal. I mean, just if that is the goal, then maybe say just two very factual statements, which said the percentage of people that or survey respondents who clearly identified open space and recreation as important or very important to a greater degree than the others or something, and then say that those who identified or the open space and community housing were identified as very important by a greater percentage. You know, something that's just a true statement rather than an interpretation would also be fine, I think.
Definitely, we can definitely make that change.
And then I thank you for adding the sentence right after that, because I have a feeling that's a direct relationship to or direct following from the conversation we had with the folks at the LDFC. I would encourage you to expand the reference to leveraging funds from investors to say leveraging funds from investors, lenders, and other funders, which I actually think will be useful to us on a number of levels. In the case of the LDFC and any programs or pools of funding that they may create, it would generally be leveraging from lenders. And it very likely will be in our interest down the road to support projects that are leveraging our funds with funding from other sources, which will often be grant funders or others. So just expanding that to be a little more inclusive than just investors, I bet will be helpful to us down the road. Under the evaluation criteria, this gets at I think a little bit at the comment Eric was making earlier too about I'm interested in making sure that we are giving ourselves the opportunity to evaluate the capacity of the entity that is the project proponent to actually execute it. I think there may be some very attractive projects that get submitted, but the submitter really doesn't have the ability to make it happen. And there isn't necessarily, they haven't made the effort to find a partner who does. And I think that could be very bad for the committee and also for the city to tie up funding with somebody who isn't able to actually use it. And the worst thing possible would be that the funding could actually get used to a degree and not actually achieve the goals. And then we end up with a bigger problem. So I do think we need to make sure that in our plan that there will be some reference to that to help us if we have to make a difficult decision down the road to return a proposal to somebody saying, hey, great idea, but why don't you come back next time with a partner who can make it happen? Or why don't you meet with the city and find a city department that is also interested in your idea that can be a joint applicant, or something like that. I think it would be helpful for if we had a broad statement about the capacity of the proponents.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like a line in there after the sentence that ends in eligibility that says something along the lines of applicants will be evaluated for their capacity to meet the project goals and timelines by the committee.
Right, something like that would be great.
And maybe something like completeness of application and feasibility, maybe just adding those pieces in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea.
And similar comment with further down where it says full applications must include. There's a list of things that need to be included. And again, there's an opportunity there under feasibility information to address this point of capacity as well. And I was intrigued by one of the things that the gentleman who presented to us at the last meeting mentioned, where I don't remember which community it was he was talking about, but he said some community actually requires all applicants to identify a municipal sponsor or a sponsoring agency or something like that. And, I would imagine in Lowell, people who are proposing parks and recreation, open space projects might identify the Parks Department. People who are proposing affordable housing and historic preservation might make reference to the DPD or somebody else. And I think it's an interesting way of helping with the feasibility issue if we're encouraging people to consult with some city agency to a degree where the city was at least, that department head was at least willing to, be a sponsor. And there may be cases where, if a very experienced land trust or community development corporation or somebody else is the project proponent, that's a pretty simple process to have a municipal partner. But there may be other cases where it's a community group that is very well intentioned but hasn't really done something like this, and they actually need a municipal partner to be an executing entity. But either way, they could have that conversation with the right city agency and come in, I think, with we would have more confidence in the application that if it has that endorsement of the right city partner. And that would also get at the question that was being raised at the last meeting about whether the sort of in the Plan E structure, the role of the city manager and if a city department that's reporting to the city manager has indicated a willingness to partner on the project, that kind of, I think, creates some level of assumption that comfort level is there. I don't know. I'm particularly interested in Christine and Eric's thoughts about whether this is something we want to incorporate at all. And I don't know if it belongs in the plan or just in the application form either, this topic.
It's a good question. I don't know that we should require it, but it might be to require it in the plan, but it may be worth including on the application so that we know. Have you approached a municipality, a department within the city to work on this project? I think it's important because I think a lot of people are going to, especially for open space ideas, when we get a project submission, it'll be helpful for us to know if they have approached the appropriate department, because it's not just a construction issue, it's an ongoing maintenance issue. And we obviously don't want to support a project that our Parks Department can't maintain.
In the application, it did outline support from the city, from boards or commissions within the city, I think departments, boards, and commissions. So it is not a requirement, but it says any letters of support.
Yeah, but which I think is important, but I almost think we want to ask explicitly, have you talked to X department?
Yeah. We may have to provide some guidance about who X is, depending on the nature of your project, because not everybody's going to know that.
Right.
But
I mean, maybe the word encouraged would be something that we could use, so it's not a requirement, but we're encouraging you to, definitely ask the question. I think, as Christine said, on the application to know whether they have or not. But maybe in the plan we could say you're encouraged to, to engage with the appropriate municipal departments, on your proposals. That way they know it's, and then we can use that as kind of a guideline for us to say, we have these two competing projects. One decided to not talk to the city and one did, and we've encouraged you to do it. So it might give us the leeway without necessarily requiring it. I don't know. I hear you. I think it's something that's important. I definitely think it should be on the application.
I do agree that, I mean, it might not be a requirement. It's mostly it's important and beneficial to the applicants if, they approach the city department in which topics they choose to do the work with. I mean, I would give them a lot of credit as when you do research on, whether the project they're trying to do is going to be feasible or not. If we find a project and then we go to that department and ask them to see whether it's going to be working or not, and they say no, it can't be done, then it's going to be like, it's almost like a waste of time for a lot of the projects, without doing adequate research in regarding to the city's departments that in association with these projects with these 3 different criteria. So it's important to to put something there so that they know to be able to go to the city departments and check or at least do more research in addition to what they have in the projects.
I have a question, just kind of something you said, Sydney, and maybe we'd get into it more when we actually went over the application, so I don't need to jump ahead, but for staff, is this going to be treated like other land use permits where you'll circulate for comments among departments prior and we get like a comment memo? Or are we just getting the application?
That was something I was thinking about, but we haven't had a conversation with that about staff yet. But my thought was that it might make sense to have, for land use boards, we have the project review where we send it around to like the building commissioner and other people in the city. It might make sense to send it around to like someone in the parks department and so on.
That would be really helpful. I don't know if we want to make, I don't want to make more work for the city staff, but it would be really helpful to have that, particularly, DPD, Public Works, and the city engineer and the Parks Department, most likely on comments on these.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already have that process, as Christine and Dylan know very well. That process is already very well laid out for all of the projects that come before the board. So this is actually, I mean, compared to the number of projects we get, this is probably gonna be a relatively small number. And if we put it to a finite internal inside the city group, it probably just makes sense. And then just kind of collate those comments to provide to the board and the applicant, give them another reason to have reached out to that board. But I think that it would address kind of Sydney's issue, which is if Public Works is going to say, yeah, there's no way we're going to be able to maintain this or do it, then we, even if somebody hasn't bothered to talk to them, we could know that going in. So,
Yeah.
I also think it takes the onus off the applicants. I imagine the applicants for CPA funds may not be as sophisticated as applicants that go in front of land use boards, especially because there is a section, again, not to jump ahead, but there is a section on the application where it lists, what other projects, permits may be required. And for some folks, that may be the first time they hear that, site plan review, variance. So I think if it's not too much work for the staff, I do think it's worth it for us to get city comments.
Agreed.
Would be very helpful. I have more. I did read the whole document. I'm sorry.
You're making the rest of us look bad.
My next was a question for the committee. The plan draft proposed 2 rounds of applications in the first year. And when I first heard that, I thought that sounded great. But then the CPC director suggested to us that that might be ambitious and that we may want to, especially the nature of the review process, as well as sort of collecting projects and so forth, we may want to have a typical 1 round a year that we advertise, in the plan, but I guess that wouldn't prevent us from adding a second round later on. Or do we want the plan to, as it currently does, I believe, show 2 rounds as the typical year? I didn't know what folks thought of that, and what folks thought of what we heard from the CPC director.
I think we should have one plan.
Yeah, I think that,
Sorry.
No, sorry. Yeah, I agreed mostly just based on what the CPC director recommended. And then I think, one of the responsibilities will be updating the plan. So if we find that we are interested in doing two rounds of accepting applications, then maybe we could update the plan, say in a year or in 5 years, whenever that time comes. But I kind of agree just based on his recommendation. And I wasn't sure if there was a reason, Dylan or Eric, why we were going to try to do 2 rounds a year.
Yeah, I also wonder, and maybe I wasn't at the last meeting, so I apologize if this was asked and answered, but if we switch to 1 round, I think that's great, but could we accept pre-eligibility forms at multiple meetings in advance? Because we meet so many times and then there's only 2 dates for pre-eligibility, but maybe we could accept those almost at any meeting. And then we would have the full applications due and then that would be the larger call. That way it would give us time and staff time and people time to think about projects through the year.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, some kind of a rolling simple entry is a great, the simple part, and then the more robust part. I do think we want to also be able to see a relatively full menu of proposals, so that the first one in the door isn't getting an advantage just because they're first, not because they're better. Being able to look at all of them and then see about how much, how we might want to propose to allocate the resources. But enabling people to submit that eligibility form anytime almost might be an interesting solution. We also might put if our quote unquote typical year as advertised in the plan is pre-eligibility forms at any time and a particular application due date once a year and a estimated award date once a year, and then we just have a note that says the committee reserves the right, or the city reserves the right to have an additional round or something like that if either funding or demand warrants it or something like that. We also might want to have a note that I think maybe it already does have a note in there about that there may be projects that can be submitted, for emergency reasons, or if there's a schedule urgency that we might hear a proposal out of order. I can imagine some threatened historic resource that needs funding or something like that, or some opportunity to step in and acquire a valuable piece of open space because it went on the market or something. That would be helpful.
Yeah, I think to answer Sinead's earlier question, I think the idea was, when we initially sat down to talk about this, we thought, a city the size of Lowell with the funding expectations we were going to have, that we could support it financially for 2 rounds. I think after hearing the comments at the last meeting, it probably makes a lot more sense to kind of get our feet wet and just do 1 round a year. And that way, as long as we have the exceptions, I think that Adam talked about, and can move a little bit more quickly if there's some sort of emergency, and then always change the plan.
I think I do agree. Since the last presentation, the 2 rounds that was placed was also, on my mind in a bit, just because we haven't been, going to the first round. So therefore, there's a lot of things to learn and maybe absorb, and before we can set another one. So I guess is after we looking in the first round, we might be able to be better in terms of looking to the time frame in between each round, and have a flexibility in terms of these rolling into applications. So I do agree in terms of just maybe get a good look into the first round, and dig deeper into what's needed and what's not needed, and what other information that we might miss and before we can even set the next round up. So it's easier to just get everything together. What are some of the barriers going through the first round, and then trying to change those and fix it before we get to the second round.
Yeah, I agree with Sydney. I did want to kind of an answer to your query, Adam, about the presentation from the Community Preservation Coalition. I thought it was incredibly valuable and really kind of a good primer for us. In the intervening time, I sat down with the CFO and the auditor to make sure that our books were kind of in order.
Always good.
And the result of those meetings was the memo that I think was sent out to everyone.
That was great. That was really helpful.
The funding. So I think we are, one of the things I was worried, we are earning interest. So that's that was done. We have the buckets, as you can see from that memo, set up correctly. And we're doing the kind of administration piece of it, kind of the way that was laid out in that process. So I just wanted to make sure, want to let the committee know that from my conversations with the finance team, things seem to be set up the appropriate way. And anybody who has worked for the city and has touched Munis knows that it's not always as simple as you might think. Munis is the financial software. And so they're going to have to do some gymnastics in the background to make it work. But I think we've got it set up such that when the committee makes a decision, we say, as I think we're going to have to in our votes, we want you to take this much money from this bucket and this much money from that bucket to fund this and get our recommendations to the council. Both the auditor and the CFO have figured out exactly how that's going to work. And so it should be kind of a fairly smooth process when we do it. So.
Well, excellent. Thank you. Well, that was the end of my comments on the plan. So I don't know if anybody else has any others or.
So how is that going to work? Are we going to just do round one, or how are we going to choose to move forward in regarding to that? So what would it be?
I think we should do one round. I think I don't know if we need to have a vote on that. It looks like that was the way that folks were leaning. Is there anybody who thinks we should do two? I guess is the real question.
Okay.
So I think if we can switch it, I guess the question would be on the floor, what kind of, do we want to try to stick to the initial year one project timelines for 2021 and a typical round one project timelines for 2022, change those pre-eligibility forms to move it back. So instead of in a typical round where we would accept them on February 1st, we could move it back. So we start accepting them, January 1st, since we're going to be making awards on December 15th.
I did not to interrupt you, Eric. I don't know that you need to put dates for pre-eligibility forms if you're going to have agenda submittal deadlines. Why can't that be the same?
Yeah, why don't you just have take that off as a row and just say that they will be reviewed at any meeting as long as they're submitted by the agenda submittal deadline. And then I would think the two drivers for when that typical year, the first year it's going to be driven by when we get the plan approved. But after that, I would imagine it would be driven by either when in the annual fiscal cycle we know how much money is going to be available that might want to be timed with when we're making our decisions about how to allocate that money. Or it might want to be tied to when, if that doesn't matter a whole lot, then it might want to be tied to being able to make award decisions at a time when it would be useful to applicants to then turn around and execute the projects. So I would imagine that having people find out that funding was available and they've been awarded money in, say, finding out in August is probably not particularly useful for the construction cycle or for people's fiscal years or various other things. but finding out in January might be quite useful for people in many cases. So I don't know if, Eric, in your conversations with the CFO and the auditor or others, whether you have a sense of whether the fiscal calendar should drive it at all. You know, the city, is there a time we will know exactly how much money is available for distribution each year, or?
Yeah. So I think in the typical year, it's going to be exactly like it was this year, which is we will be taking a vote probably in late May, and then the council will be taking a vote, either in late May or early June to appropriate the CPC funds for the following fiscal year. So that FY22 line that was on the memo that we got, that's the budget that we voted on a couple of meetings ago that went to the council and they approved it. So it would likely be early June when we would know this is how much money we're going to have to spend next fiscal year. And in most fiscal years, I'm guessing, and this is how most communities work, there's not going to be a big surplus left over. The money that we get for that fiscal year is going to be basically all we're going to have to spend. We're not going to have 2.6 million sitting in an account. We're going to have probably right around $1 million if we're lucky to spend every year. So that will be for the next fiscal year. So when we award that just say we made that vote now and we find out at this early June meeting that the council's okay with it, then we know we have $1 million. That's for FY22, which starts on July 1 and runs to June 30th. So when we make that kind of votes on those projects, that would be with that money anytime in that window. So we'll have a whole year basically to vote on that money.
Well, so then
what makes sense.
Yeah, so then maybe having an application due, so we'll know that it's, say, $1 million. That can be publicized in June, right? With that council action. So that would be the sort of official, opening of the next round in some manner. We would presumably collect all of the eligibility forms that had come in between the last award cycle and then maybe give people a few more months with the knowledge of how much money is available, because that will affect how people craft their requests, I'm sure. So the proposed typical year round 2 schedule actually looks like it aligns pretty well to have a September deadline that we would then review with a goal of award decisions happening in January. And then that actually gives people an announcement at a time where it's a little late to be putting things out to bid, but they can at least get some things launched for spring and summer execution, the best time to do a lot of these things.
Right.
I mean, if they're acquiring property, that doesn't matter, I guess, so much, but if there's a capital component of the projects.
If it's a non-public entity that doesn't have to do a lot of bidding and can just start construction, then they've got a couple of months to hire their contractors and get construction started. That's what they're using the money for.
I know, Dylan, you've obviously given this a lot of thought, so please weigh in if we're suggesting something that you've already learned doesn't make sense for whatever reason. But
No, I think that all makes sense. I left the 2 rounds in because I figured it would be something that the committee should talk about and decide on rather than staff.
Well, and then throw just in your very well written exceptions section, just add a line that says, so we don't have to amend the plan if we don't want to, that says the committee can introduce additional funding rounds during the year if conditions warrant or something like that. Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments on the plan?
No, but do we need to make a motion to accept all of your changes? Or that in? Sorry, I didn't mean to be.
I'll defer that. No, I'll defer that to you. I don't know if it's the kind of thing that needs motions or not, but if somebody would like to make one for any, some, or all, or none, that's fine. I'll entertain it.
All right, I'll make a motion to update the plan per Adam's comments, starting with housing needs through the criteria, and then updating the submittal timeline in a typical year, including the rolling applications for pre-eligibility applications.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, motion carries. So, thank you. All right, next up is the application forms. So we have, I think we have the pre-eligibility form and we have the application form. Do we want to take them in order, I guess? So the eligibility form, anyone have any comments? Again, general comment, I have to say is, again, very well done, very thoughtful. And I also really appreciate how you've kept us informed as you've developed these forms as well by sharing them with the committee.
I think the pre-eligibility form is great. It's simple, short, to the point. I don't have any comments on the pre-eligibility form.
Where would the suggestion that someone made earlier, I think, about asking, have you contacted any city departments about your project? Would that go on the eligibility form or the application form?
Right now,
I was thinking on the application form,
Okay.
but it might be a good idea, I guess, to put it on the pre-eligibility.
Yeah, I think if we put it on both, it might give them time to actually ask if they have.
Yeah, 'cause I could imagine a scenario where someone submits a pre-eligibility form for a project idea and then gets our feedback and then approaches the city department before submitting a full application. So I support adding them to both.
Agreed.
Is there a word limit to the areas that's in, you know, I guess that's highlighted? I know that we can attach document, but is there any word limit once a person type inside there? No.
We may find we wish there was.
Okay.
Any other, do we want to, I guess, do we want to suggest that, or do you want to, or not? Or should we wait and see?
I think we should wait and see.
All right. Any other comments on the eligibility form? I guess if not, I'll entertain a motion regarding the eligibility form.
So moved.
Second.
I take it that was the motion to approve, right? All right. All those in favor?
With the one change, right?
Yeah.
Aye.
Yeah, there we go. Any opposed? All right, we'll get this whole voting thing down pretty soon, right?
I'm still getting used to being on this side of the table.
It's kind of fun, isn't it? Right?
It is.
All right, very good. That one carries. And next is the application itself. Any additional discussion on that?
I did want to add the feasibility and capability or capacity. We have the feasibility section, but to the capacity actually to do the project. I think that should be more specific. And then this is just a personal preference. They only mention special permits and variances as an option. I actually would like to know what land use board and what permits, and I think it would be helpful if we listed them all out. It's the same staff that reviews the land use permits. I think it would be helpful for this board to know, you know, if something just needs a simple variance versus, you know, the whole gamut of all four. We should know that.
So you're talking about zoning board, planning board, Concom, and historic, right?
Yes. Because there's certain areas of the city where in theory all four, and and especially if they come to us and they haven't even started that process, we should know that before, in case it holds up funding for other projects.
Are there other feasibility, other aspects of feasibility that we may want to ask about that are also important in addition to approvals or land use of permits? I think.
We want to know if they've ever done a project like this before.
Well, I think we have a question about that now. That's been added, which I like seeing. That says, describe any past experience you, your architect, engineer, or contractor have with similar projects, which demonstrates your ability to successfully complete the project. And I think the pre-eligibility form had a question about, have you done this before? It said it a little more nicely than that, but yeah, do you have experience completing similar projects? Yes or no?
Do we want to ask what their experience is? Because someone might think they have a lot of experience and we could disagree.
Well, it says describe.
It does say describe, so hopefully that'll get them to.
Right. And if they describe it by saying, yeah, I've done this before.
Probably a sign.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, in terms of, well, maybe it's somewhere else. In terms of feasibility, things like financial, they may be asking us for money, but what they're asking us for may or may not be the whole cost of whatever it is they're trying to do. And do they have the rest?
Number 5.
Is that in there?
The updated budget information.
Oh, God, yeah, okay.
I think that would give us that information.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's in the eligibility form too.
Okay, good.
You know what? I have a question. Why? Oh, never mind. I guess on the printed version of the application, it says submit 2 copies, but on the electronic one, it says submit 10. So is it 10?
It's 10, yeah. I think it's supposed to be 1 for each member and then 1 for the city copy.
And then is that true for the pre-eligibility form?
I think it would make sense to update that to 10 as well.
Well, so as a person who cares about use of resources, we want to just have them submitted require them to submit it electronically so we can email it to all the.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
Well, is that equitable though? Does everyone have access? So if we can make it a preference, we'd rather you do it digitally. But if someone doesn't have the ability to do it, is that going to preclude them from submitting an application?
Well, I guess we could, I think that's important that we make sure we're open to all. But is it reasonable? These are not super long. Well, they could be, but chances are the person who can't submit it digitally is not going to submit a super long package. Could we accept it in hard copy and just one and win a one hard? In fact, we may want one signed hard copy anyway, that they have to submit one with an original wet signature on it in any event. And if they are unable to submit it digitally, can we scan it? And is that something that the city staff can handle? And
yeah, if we go back to meeting in person, will we have access to the iPads in the council chamber so that we're then not printing everything so we have it in front of us when we come?
Oh, that's a very good question. I do not know.
I have a double monitor. It's very easy, but.
I assume we were just going to meet on Zoom forever. I don't know about you guys.
I wanted to talk about that later today, actually.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I was asking Dylan a while back in terms of getting a binder because I do have difficulty in terms of looking at the screen as well. So I'm not really in terms really, because honestly, for me, navigating the screen, even though I have 1 or 2 at home or at work, it's not healthy for me basically, and I like to also be able to turn the pages and go here and there, and it's easier for me to do that. So if I had to prefer, I'd take a binder anytime. I mean, when I go back to work, I can always print it, but I do, if there's possibility of having a copy, I'd rather have it and take it with me than a digital one.
Okay.
I think that's compelling. Let's keep it at they need to
Yeah.
submit the copies.
That makes sense.
We'll blame Sydney when all the forests are gone.
Yeah. When Jane comes after us for too much paper.
Can we still ask that it also be submitted digitally as an option so that we can distribute digitally?
Yes, I think we can ask that. I think we require digital submissions right now for some of the materials for other boards.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would prefer that personally.
Yeah. I agree. Maybe we can have board members who are more comfortable kind of opt in to just getting digital only, and then
And will this be like the other land use boards where the city actually posts applications on the website for the public to review? I don't know if that's appropriate or not in this case, but you have that great website where residents can look at projects that are pending for, before any of the boards. Is there some similar? You think there's going to be an interest in that here too? What's that?
I said that's Christine's baby. She
I see her smiling. I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't know that.
My opinion would be, for what it's worth, that that's a really useful tool for the public. I think when somebody submits an application to us, it's a public record anyway. So I think we should just. It's also easier for the staff if they have the same process for every board.
Yeah.
Then they're not having to figure out a new way to do it. If we can just treat this like every other board and do the same requests for internal kind of comments and the same posting, I think that makes sense. What do you guys think?
And because when we're voting on the allocation, that's a public hearing, right? So people could say that they were in favor or not in favor of a project, right?
Oh, well, then they definitely need to have access to the information about the project.
Yeah.
So, well, that's another reason to have a digital submission. That's that was what prompted me to ask that question. Okay. Do we need to? That was a good discussion. Do we need to? Is there a motion that needs to be made for any edits or changes, or are those minor enough and that Dylan's got it? And
we might need a motion to approve the applications, but we can certainly make those changes. I don't know if they need to be mentioned specifically.
So I'll make a motion to approve the pre-eligibility and the application form, including the edits we discussed tonight.
Do we have a second?
Oh, second. I'll second the motion.
Seconded. Do we have any further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Someday we'll have a controversial vote, but it's not tonight. I don't think we have any opposed, right? All right. And we have the really controversial, we have the meeting schedule. So we've, it looks like the proposal is to formalize what we've been doing, which is to schedule monthly meetings on the fourth Thursday. And then presumably we would cancel any meetings where there's no business. Is that, does that make sense and work for everybody?
Yeah, it works for me.
Obviously it works for the people who are here on Thursday, but we've had pretty good attendance in general, so hopefully that will continue to work. So I guess, can we have a motion regarding the meeting schedule?
I will move
Can I
approval.
actually ask-
of the meeting schedule posted.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Sinead.
Sorry.
I actually, yeah, I just have a question. I know that we've been meeting fully remote since like 15 months ago. It does say that, all the meetings will be in the city council chambers unless noted otherwise. I know the agendas say very specifically that we're meeting via Zoom, but I wasn't sure. It's more of a question than an edit to the document going forward, if we'll be continuing to meet on Zoom, if we'll be in the city council chambers, or if we should add anything about what's happening right now to this document.
It's a really good question, and I actually wanted to ask that as well, whether even the next meeting is one that, since it will be after the emergency order expires, and I don't know if the legislature's acted yet or not to extend. I also know the city council is now meeting in person, so is there any reason we either can or should continue to meet on Zoom, or should we assume that we are meeting in person going forward? I'd love to actually meet some of you in person too.
When would be, anticipate the next meeting will be? Is it around July or August?
Well, according to the schedule, we actually have one. We have one scheduled for the 4th Thursday of June. I don't know if we're going to need one since we had one in May and we're having one now, but there may be a reason that we need to vote on the plan, for example. I'm not sure. I'm also not available on the 4th Thursday of June, so if you want to get something through without my input, that would be a good night to do it.
So I can kind of give you the same response that we've given to the other boards that have talked about this, which is there's still a masking and a social distancing requirement at City Hall right now. And so just in an effort to make sure that we're not going to have in-person meetings where there's not enough space for the public to be, we are going to wait to have boards start meeting where the boards are in person until the manager has removed those requirements from City Hall. She has maintained those requirements because Lowell is not doing as well as the rest of the state for vaccination purposes. And so my anticipation is, as once Lowell's vaccination rate rises to the point where I think the state was when the things were dropped, that she will remove those restrictions. We've talked with the staff about continuing to have the meetings in a hybrid format where the members will be in person. The public may attend in person or via Zoom. And so there's a possibility that we're going to go forward in that manner and have the Zoom, piped into the city council chambers. I think I don't know how other communities have what they've seen during the pandemic, but we've seen actually a robust public participation across the planning board and the zoning board and the conservation commission, because I think there are people who feel like they don't have to, schedule time away from home to be able to participate in public meetings. So I think it's a good thing. So if that might be by the July meeting. We're not going to post the agenda till the July meeting until the week before. So it might be by July. It probably won't be by the June meeting. That just might be a little tight. I just don't know if we're going to have a meeting on the 26th or not. We'll know in time enough for the agenda posting whether or not those restrictions have been dropped. So still a little bit up in the air from the city manager.
I just want to add also that if there's a meeting on the basically on the 24th, just want to let you know I probably won't be able to make it. Some personal issues came out that I had to take a couple of weeks out, so and I definitely sure that I won't be able to make it on that day.
Well, since now 2 of us are not able to make it in June, is there any reason, based on the approval cycle or anything else, is there going to be business on June 24th that needs to be done, or can we in approving a schedule, can we just say the next meeting will be the fourth Thursday of July? It's Eric, Dylan, I don't know if you had anything you needed to have the committee act on.
So, and this is a question, I know that Dylan might have thought of this as well. So we need to, I believe, approve a plan and then submit it to the council for their approval.
Do we have any issue with approving the plan tonight based on
Well,
that?
that's what I was gonna say. Based on the edits, can we just approve the plan and submit it to the council?
Well, you're the lawyer. What we advertised in the agenda was we would review the community preservation plan draft. If that's sufficient notice to the public that we would actually vote on it, then yes. If not, then we probably do need to do another meeting.
Yeah, but not the.
I'll do another meeting to be safe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a tough one, just based on the. So I guess the only concern would be if we're talking about a September 15th kind of first application round, having a council vote that approves the plan, hopefully, knock on wood, approves the plan in early August. Is that are we giving folks enough time, or should we try to get it approved in early July so that folks have a couple of months to prepare for the submission? I mean, I'm imagining folks are preparing anyway. But that's my only concern would be, are we narrowing the window a little bit much for pre-eligibility? Because then that basically means that we would have one meeting during which we could review kind of pre-eligibility submissions, which would be the end of August, and then they'd have 2 weeks to submit their.
Yeah, that does sound awfully.
That sounds all tight. I think we probably should go forward in June with a June meeting and you know, post a vote on to approve the plan and submit it to the city council.
Well, if it's going to be on the 24th, then you're going to need to run that meeting, Eric, and hopefully there will be a quorum. If we do it on the 23rd, I think I can be there, but.
So is there like a kind of proxy thing, or should, if you're absent on that day, or you just, how's that work if you're not there?
No proxies. You could zoom in for the vote via phone, or you know, however you can get in. But yeah, you can't vote by proxy. It's not allowed. You have to do that. Also, I think that this will also give the members that aren't here a chance to look at the edits that were made, and
yep, that would be good.
I don't know, just they'll see, since they weren't here for this discussion, they'll see it, and you guys have already kind of opined and kind of, I think we know your thoughts about the current draft. So as long as we have a quorum, if other folks are available, then we can go forward, and they can, if they have comments, then they can still submit comments, and we can still vote on it with amended changes, as long as, you know.
Okay. Well, I think I'm hearing then that we probably want a motion to approve the schedule as proposed. Is that, do we have that motion?
I was so moved. I make a motion to approve the schedule as proposed.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? And that motion carries. All right. So now finalize opening of application period. Review dates for the opening and closing of CPA applications for the upcoming year. The proposed deadlines are that pre-eligibility forms would be due August 1st. Full applications would be due September 15th. And then it does suggest a December 16th estimated project award, although I think that's less important for us to approve. Seems to me the first two are the more urgent ones. And given the conversation we just had, I'm actually a little nervous about those dates. That seems, yes, hopefully people have started working on applications or thinking about them already, but that does seem a bit aggressive for folks to close pre-eligibility August 1st and also to close full applications in September. I wonder if another month for full applications and I guess rolling pre-eligibility up to the deadline for the September meeting agenda might be give people a little bit more time, even if we do approve a plan at the end of June and the council approves it in July. I don't know what people think. There may have been a back end reason why you were
So if you,
pushing those dates.
so if the full, okay. I'm trying to look at the schedule with those dates. So if they submit August 1st, they'd be on the August 26th meeting. If they were September 15th, that pushes them to October 28th, or could we take it on the 23rd? No, we wouldn't want that, right?
Well, I think what we would do is we would say the pre-eligibility is due by the September 2nd. And then the final applications would be due by October 15th. And then the award, we would probably kick back to January.
Or could we accept pre-eligibility on August 5th and September 2nd for the August and September meeting? And so we'd have 2 meetings where we could talk to people about projects?
Well, I think we would set it as a deadline. Like the last time you could submit your eligibility would be September 2nd, but you could submit it before that.
Okay,
So that's
Yeah.
somebody who got it in early would be on the August meeting, I think.
That
Somebody who
makes
got it
sense.
Before that.
yep, that makes sense.
And that January 15th date actually is what was reflected in the plan, in the round 2 plan. So I think that pushing it out 1 month makes sense and give people a little bit more time.
Well, we don't even have to say estimated award date.
I don't think we have to vote on that because that's not even all entirely in our control, right? Once it goes, we might make a recommendation, but then the council does its thing about deciding when they're going to take up that recommendation, right?
Yeah, I think maybe we should change award to recommendation.
And even that, I don't know if we
Want to tie ourselves.
want to bind ourselves, you know, I mean, there may be, well, and that's not, to be fair, there may be reason why we might receive an application and say, hey, we need more information about, you know, these 3 applications, we need more information or something, and we can't make decisions until we have it. And that may, I mean, it's still useful to set some expectation so applicants have an idea of when funding might be available, because that will affect their applications. But I don't know that we need to vote on that date, or, you know, vote to the way we do need to set a deadline. I think that we do need to vote on, but
Yeah, I think we should set those. I would say that my opinion would be that we should set those 2 deadlines at September 2nd and October 15th, and then, you know, an anticipated, you know, action date for the CPC is January 15th or something like that.
yep, that
So
sounds good.
it's suitably vague while giving some sort of understanding. It's going to be the winter.
Yep.
We set up those and put it as estimated that way. I mean, you know, January 15th, that's a tough. We're not going to have a meeting on December 12th on the end.
Oh, we probably aren't. That's true.
So that means likely having a meeting sometime in the beginning of January. It's also going to be a new council, a brand new 11-person city council, and that's going to be their second meeting. Is going to be that meeting in January. So expecting this to like sail through without any kind of speed bumps.
Hmm.
By January 15th, it's probably not. I mean, I that may be a little bit optimistic. But if we can say our estimated action is by January 15th, then we can schedule
Right.
an early January meeting. Let people get through the holidays and then dump all this on.
What did we do about on our meeting schedule? What did we do about the holidays? So, oh, we've got it on December
There's one on the 16th.
16th. Well, yeah, if we're receiving applications October 15th, then we actually have the
Three
ability to review them October, even though it's past the agenda item deadline, but we'd have the ability to look at them October, November, and December. So the idea that, and potentially a special meeting or a meeting in the beginning of January if need be.
Well, I'm probably sometime around those times we'll be setting the meeting schedule for next year.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll know whether we're going to need a meeting in January or whether or not it's more clear. So that would be, I think that would probably be a reasonable setup and give people appropriate expectations for our actions that we have control over.
Any other discussion on that? I guess we need a motion to approve the application, the eligibility form and application deadline as discussed.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I
All right, carries. And I think that's it, other than further comments from Community Preservation Committee members. Hearing none, we need everybody's favorite motion.
Motion to
I make a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Dylan, you can decide who made it and who seconded it. All right, well, thanks a lot, everybody. And as I said, I apologize, I will miss the late
Right.
June meeting. I'm taking my son to the airport, so I'm not sure I can even
Oh, boy.
call in on my cell. But I will look forward to seeing you all again in July.
All right, guys.
Bye,
Thanks.
everybody.
thanks
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.